The Collapse video series is for entertainment purposes only. Do not commit acts of violence. Americans and Canadians wake up to discover that the power is still not back on. It had gone out Wednesday night and today is Friday. This is annoying. A few hours without electricity can actually be a welcome change to the normal routine. Yesterday, it forced people to read a book in the afternoon instead of looking at a computer, have a picnic for lunch instead of fast food, and share drinks by candlelight before heading to bed early. But the fun is over. The food in the refrigerator is spoiling, and all the batteries are dead in cell phones, laptops, and tablets. Even for those who do still have battery power, the cell tower generators normally only have 24 hours of fuel. There is no more cell phone reception. In cities and towns that do not have backup generators for their water pumps, the water is no longer running. With no electricity, no water is being pumped into the water towers. City water towers normally hold 1 day of water. Water is very, very heavy. Constructing towers to hold 2 days of water would be much more expensive than towers holding 1 day. People are alarmed when they turn on the faucet and nothing comes out. This is serious. The toilets won't flush. People don't know what to do and continue using the toilets. The human waste sits in the toilet bowl. The smell rapidly becomes noticeable. Radios in the home, for the most part, are a thing of the past. People use their cell phones and laptops instead. Without the use of those cell phones and laptops, and without any radio in the home, people are very hungry for some sort of information on how much longer the blackout will last. They go to their cars to listen to the radio in the car, using precious gasoline or car battery power in the process. They hear continued government assurances that power will be restored, but it may be a few more days and everyone should plan accordingly. People in the cities decide now is a good time to visit grandma or any other relative in the country. Grandma doesn't have electricity either, but water and sanitation will be better where she is. At least you can go collect clean water from a stream. And besides, the trip will give the kids something to do. Gasoline is a problem. Everyone has only the gasoline that was in the car at the time the electricity went out. However, statistically, the average car will have half a tank, and that's sufficient to drive about 3 hours. For most city dwellers, that's enough to make it to a relative's house. A small exodus from the cities begins. It goes fairly smoothly. Unlike in a hurricane where nearly the entire city evacuates in one afternoon, this exodus only involves a portion of the city and is more spread out over time, such that a massive traffic jam does not occur. Traffic is heavy, but it's moving. No one has given to the homeless for more than a day. Even if people had given them money, there's no place for them to buy food. The few stores that remained open are now completely cleared. Their shelves are empty. Homeless shelters are unable to feed the clients without electricity or natural gas or water to run the kitchens. They are given sandwiches, but that quickly runs out. City governments know the situation is much more dire than is publicly known. They do not want to spend resources on that population. A handful of homeless begin breaking into stores that had been closed due to lack of electricity. They are promptly arrested. Order, for the moment, is maintained. People in the hotter parts of the United States, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Houston, are getting very hot. When the electricity stopped, the air conditioning stopped. Very few people lived in these parts of the country before air conditioning. The houses are not designed to be cool without air conditioning. The homes have now been unbearably hot for more than 24 hours. The elderly and people with certain medical conditions are the most vulnerable. The hospitals begin to see people in the emergency room reporting heat-related illness, such as heat exhaustion and heat stroke. In Phoenix, the heat is especially bad due to a heat wave. Temperatures soar to 108 degrees. Even though Phoenix is one of the cities with backup generators for the water pumps, people have nonetheless started departing the city for someplace cooler. Even if they know the home of a relative will not be any cooler, there is air conditioning in the car. The drive itself will bring welcome relief from the inferno, even if it's only for a few hours. The air conditioning in the car is too hard to resist. There is a mass exodus from Phoenix. The 60 active nuclear power plants in the US and 6 in Canada have all shut down. But even after they shut down, it takes a month for them to cool. The fuel rods are still hot after a month and radioactive for 100 years. But after a month, they are cool enough that they won't melt down the walls of their containment. The plants rely on electricity to move water past the reactor core to keep it from overheating. Though the plant generates electricity when in operation, it still receives electricity from the grid to move the water. When power from the grid is disrupted, known as a loss of outside power event or loop event, the plant automatically shuts down and diesel generators kick in to move the water. There are also backup batteries lasting 4 hours. In a study of over 10,000 tests and actual loop events, there was a 1% failure rate for the diesel generators. But the on-site technicians were able to get the generators back up and running every single time, either before the batteries ran out or without needing the batteries because only one of several generators was affected. If the grid were to go down because of an electromagnetic pulse or a coronal mass ejection, many of the reactors would be melting down because too much electronic equipment would be damaged. But there wasn't an EMP or coronal mass ejection. This is a grid down due to sabotage. All of the reactors are safely cooling down, except one. The exodus from Phoenix is a problem for the Palo Verde nuclear power plant outside of Phoenix. The plant's appearance is unusual because the cooling towers are so short. It is the one and only nuclear power plant in the world not located near a major body of water. To cool the reactor core, the plant uses treated wastewater from Phoenix. It is a brilliant, environmentally friendly design that works great unless there is a sudden and dramatic depopulation in the city of Phoenix. The mass exodus of people due to the heat wave has caused a noticeable drop in wastewater. The plant has its own reservoir of water that would last 13 days if they were completely cut off from the city. What is in the reservoir now, coupled with the wastewater still coming from Phoenix, is enough to finish out the month-long cooling process as long as Phoenix does not continue to rapidly depopulate. The workers at the Palo Verde plant put in a call to their contact at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to please declare martial law in Phoenix and prevent more people from leaving until the reactor is completely cooled. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission notifies the president of the problem and supports the request for martial law. The president and her advisors consider the request. This would require a lot of men and a lot of resources. Keeping people from leaving requires more men than merely keeping order. Not only can't the people leave, they must stay alive. They would need a month of food, not to mention medical supplies. Then there's the fuel needed to run the water department and the hospitals. And in the end, they might not be doing the people of Phoenix any favors. They would have food and water for a month, but after that, it stops, and they would still need to leave the city. Things may be worse for them after a month. As time goes by, rural areas become increasingly likely to put a halt to the influx of additional outsiders. The president decides that the resources are more important than that piece of desert. The people of Phoenix have to leave the city anyway. They might as well leave now. She orders the evacuation of the military facilities in Phoenix. The president notifies the governor of Arizona that the Palo Verde nuclear power plant is going to melt down in 2 weeks, and recommends he strip Phoenix of its supplies before they become radioactive. She gives the impression that it is not possible to save the plant. He orders the National Guard to evacuate the city and take whatever supplies they can find. Global stock markets remain closed for the second business day in a row. Because today is Friday, they won't open again until Monday. The stock markets are very sensitive to nervousness in the business community. Right now, they are very nervous. The largest stock market by far is in New York City, and so is the second largest. Also, the stock exchange in Toronto is in the top 10. On top of that, they have lost two of the world's largest consumer populations. Who will buy their goods? Furthermore, their manufacturing chains span the globe. They may get raw materials from Canada, such as oil or timber. They may have significant portions of their executive operations in New York City. They may assemble their parts in the rural United States. Even businesses that have their entire operations outside of the affected countries still rely on economies that will be impacted by this extreme disruption to the global economy. This is all very bad for the global economy, and everyone knows it, not just businessmen. In Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and elsewhere, bank customers withdraw much more cash from their accounts than usual. The banks quietly notify the government that they are concerned about the volume of withdrawals and urge the government to put the people at ease somehow. Stay tuned for scenes from next week's episode. For an ad-free version of these videos, go to BitChute or Brighteon, links in the description. Even with the ads, there is not enough YouTube ad revenue to support this show. Please consider subscribing on Subscribestar. Next week on The Collapse. The looting that had been minimal the previous day now takes place in earnest. People who normally would not engage in looting are breaking into stores to find water. They are not dying of thirst yet, but they know it's coming, and the time to find clean stored water is now. Once the store is broken into and the crime is committed, it seems silly to only take the water. People seize everything they can from the stores.